So what I hope to do in the next 8 or so minutes, 9 minutes maybe, is sort of remind us of the journey that we have been on, give a brief description of going local. Some of you may never have heard those two words together. To sort of tell you a little bit about the wrestling that we have been through, the discernment, and the challenges that were raised out of that discernment, and how we plan to address those challenges, and sort of just give you a quick timeline for the next 8 months or so. So for several years, we've been on a journey. Beginning in 2009, the central theme of our bishops' convention addresses have been, in some form, seeking and joining God's work in our neighborhoods. And in 2012, Bishop Beckwith formed a mission strategy committee. And this team wrestled with some issues too, and some challenges were raised, but it also, I think more importantly, opened the door for some conversation about how we can do church differently. 2 years after that, in 2014, we announced that we were going to try an experiment, so to speak. So try an initiative called Going Local, and I'll talk about that in a second. At the same time, the Task Force for Reimagining the Episcopal Church were finishing their final report, and at General Convention gave this powerful invitation to all of us to follow Jesus together into the neighborhood, traveling lightly. Now we have already been on the way, and we're eager to step with the broader church in this work. So why go local? Well, as we all know, society has changed. It's no longer a cultural norm for people to attend church. So if we are going to participate in God's mission of reconciliation, we need to go to where the people are. That's physically go to where people are, but also go to where they are in that space. Going local is a process that invites clergy and congregations on a journey together. And I think that together is an important piece. Through the journey, relationships are formed and developed with God, with each other, and with neighbors. And we do this through concrete actions. Through practices, we learn what it means to be God's people in a complex world. These practices are really set forth as 5 steps. And the steps are not really linear, but it's just easier to present that way, right? So listening, discerning, experimenting, evaluating, and living into God's future. These are helping us shape a different future in our diocese, in our congregations, but in our diocese as a whole. And we do this work in learning communities, which is represented by these 3 circles, overlapping and intertwined. The congregational learning communities, so that's the individual congregations themselves, but they come together about quarterly to share what they're learning together. 2 learning communities of clergy, and also then another diocesan learning community that sort of oversees what's going on and listens and learns from what's happening. Along with the staff, this process is supported by consultants from the Missional network. Some of you may have met them. They are engaged in every facet of our learning. They also provide coaching for myself, for our bishop, and for Suzanne Willen. Through this process, the diocesan learning community, which is a group of staff, clergy, and lay leaders from throughout the diocese, listen to what the clergy and congregations were learning about themselves and discerning the implications of the diocese as a whole. So out of that work, out of that discernment, came some key challenges that we thought we could tackle. Not simple challenges, but yet things that we know we need to change if we are to live into a different future. These are critical challenges. So in these times of change, how do we rediscover God's active presence as the source of our hope while we journey together as a diocese committed to God's mission? And what leadership skills, that's lay and clergy, are required in this new place where we find ourselves Too many of our leaders feel ill-equipped to address the changes that our congregations face. Addressing these challenges will require us to engage in new behaviors. We need to learn new ways of going about God's work. And we need to reshape the lens through which we see ministry. In this, we're developing a practice of discerning and testing. So discerning and testing, sort of building it into our DNA. Now, with this discernment in hand, an experiment has been designed with additional learning communities in mind. And that is beginning this January. So there's 4 learning teams that have been formed, 2 to address our source of hope and 2 to address leadership for our journey. They consist of clergy and lay throughout the diocese, from large and small congregations, urban and rural congregations. These teams will address those questions under the guidance of a coach using an established series of steps. And the teams will create experiments to address this challenge. And they'll test out what they've been discerning and discovering. So through this process, a broad range of people across our diocese will experiment and test their way into new habits, attitudes, and practices. So this slide just gives you a little bit of a relationship about how we started with going local and sort of how we morphed into this other work of adaptive challenges. And to just give you a little timeline of what's happening. So this teamwork, the leadership and source of hope teams will run from, the bulk of their work will run from February to May. They'll meet in June with a larger group to share what they're learning together. Going local will continue, and it's a longer process, it's 18 months, so that it's ongoing and will continue to be ongoing. There's currently 7 congregations involved, and they are busy this month creating their experiments to be in their neighborhood. Very, very simple experiments like take a neighbor out to coffee. So very simple experiments to start engaging their community in a different way. And then they will come together in March, sort of midpoint of when they're experimenting, and share what they're learning together. There's 16 clergy in 2 separate groups that meet monthly on a regular basis, working on their own adaptive challenge, their own challenges that they face, professional and personal. And then in March, early April, we'll start another cycle of clergy and congregations on that journey. Along with all this, sounds very complicated, doesn't it? Along with all this, your staff, the diocesan staff, are fully engaged in our own learning. We are opening our hearts and minds to what God is up to in our diocese and discerning experiments and evaluations that will enable us, with God's help, to shape a different future and join God in our neighborhoods. So for more information, I will hang around after our session today. If you have questions about going local, Suzanne Willen is available by email or phone. She was not able to be here today, but she's the one you need to talk to if you just feel called to maybe be a part of one of these action learning teams as we move forward, because there'll be more and more teams forming over the next couple of years, maybe more. There's also going to be a presentation at convention. Michael, is that Saturday?
Yes.
Saturday morning? And then there'll also be a couple workshops at convention. So look for those.